What's the question?
So I guess, so this is the formal change of moving volunteers from the current system to each committee and each commission going to one appointee from each member of council for a 1-year period.
Yes. Well, in the past, I will say that when I first came on council in 2018, I had the same feeling. I couldn't understand why all commissions and committees weren't appointed in the way that people vote. I mean, everybody votes for a mayor candidate, but there's also council members. And I could see why that it was a better representation of council to have every committee be represented by council and the mayor. So this isn't one that I thought was a huge deal, but it was definitely a unanimous decision to move this way. And the reason for it is, well, I can't speak to people's motivations, but I understand why this was brought up. I think it was Kent's idea. But having served on several committees and commissions, I don't really feel this is slightly better, but it's not a real solution to political or self-serving appointees. I think there's better ways to do that. But this is what the committee agreed to submit.
Kobe, is the language says appointed by each council member or nominated by each council?
Because there needs to be a council action. It's
so you can
effectively nominating, and then the council approves
right.
it.
So it is each council member nominates a member to each commission and committee, and they are appointed by the consent of the council. Yes. I just want to make sure that the language.
That's a good point, and that's one of the issues I have.
Yeah, and that's what it says, shall appoint one member subject to approval of the council. So.
Is, if I remember Kent speaking about this issue on the dais, his concern was that he didn't want to have to embarrass somebody that was being appointed by voting against them. But you're going to be in the same boat here. Because if Gretchen appoints somebody that Kelly thinks is totally inappropriate, she may not want to vote, but she'll be in the exact same position to be forced to either not approve that appointment or to approve it. That's the only problem I see here. And like I said, I think there's better ways to handle that.
And the other piece from this also was we provided a mechanism how to remove a committee or commission member.
That's
where
a separate
we could.
one.
Is it separate? It's part of this.
It's not. So we really had a separate discussion about creating processes for removal of a committee member.
Long discussion.
And
that's right.
The breakthrough in that conversation was just to move it to everybody serves on committees for 1 year, and their term ends. Caveat, my eyes are getting old. Is it June 30th? Everybody.
Yes.
They serve for 1 year term, and then each committee has to be reformed every year.
Yeah, and you guys picked, as I recall, the June 30th day after the election, but gives the council members enough time to kind of get a meeting or two under their belt so that they're able to kind of know the way things work.
1 year defined term, it might be able to remove the need to have a structure for removing a bad committee member, since they will be part the way through the year before it's discovered they're a bad committee member, and then maybe just not have them be reappointed in the next committee. So that was kind of the compromise that that was kind of the epiphany of the way to handle not having to add language to the charter to remove committee members and put them through that embarrassing situation. And our work is done.
This was a very detailed, thoughtful, lengthy, multiple conversations about this. It wasn't something that was just kind of thrown together.
This would have been our number one item to talk about tonight.
I do one question on this. As far as the, each member of the city council shall appoint one member to each committee, subject to the approval of the council. I mean, I love this idea, but not necessarily that person's pick being subject to the approval of the council. If the citizens, I feel, voted for that particular person to get up here, them being up here should be enough for their pick to be put in place. I think that is what helps to diversify the council. If you have a majority a majority on council that doesn't want, one person or another, that person may never be able to serve. I think that by removing the subject to the approval of the council, if I'm up here and I want to choose somebody to serve on a committee, just me being elected and the people saying we elected him to represent us should be enough for then my pick to be put in. So I like this idea. I really do. I just don't want my pick subject to the approval of council. I'd like for my pick to just be my pick. Kind of like we do right now with the charter review. Nobody had to approve my pick. I picked my person, and
it was still subject to vote by the council.
Yeah. It has always been.
All committees are, aren't they?
I don't think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every committee and commission is appointed by the council. And here's the thing. The only time you will face that problem is if it is somebody, there are two situations. One is if you are trying to appoint somebody who is just, people know he's not or she is not the right person for that committee or commission on the council. Or council is really that divided where you have 4 members who just hate a certain aspect of whatever political spectrum you want to call it, and those council members, people will never get approved by the council. But in my opinion, you can't avoid that one way or the other. Even if you appoint them, you will always have that same majority-minority ratio in every commission and committee if that's what you are trying to fix. This was more an idea of trying to give everybody, and one of the discussion points we had is, but the new council members might not even know who it would be that they should appoint. And our message to our city manager was that the city should do a better filtering job of creating a pool of candidates that the new council members should spend the time talking to and coming to know before they appoint them or nominate them to a committee or commission. I mean, when we formed the Air Park Committee, I believe I talked to 18 people before I picked who I was going to nominate for the committee.
Well, and that's more to my point is that, yes, I mean, we should be able to pick who we want, but just a point of clarification, then section 11.15 under the charter review, it says the mayor and each council member shall each appoint one member. The committee shall be appointed for a 12-month term, and such term may be extended by the council. It doesn't say anywhere in here that my pick needs to be, and if we...
You have to read the sentence before that. The council shall appoint a charter review committee.
Right, and then it tells you how to appoint the charter review committee. The mayor and each council member shall appoint one member each.
But each of you individually can't do anything. You have no authority. You're a body corporate. You have to act as a body. So the council has to ratify, if nothing else, the slate that's been appointed.
I guess I don't see anywhere in there, and I don't really remember approving or having anybody approve my pick.
Your pick was included on a resolution of who's being appointed to the committee, and the council passed that resolution, I think, on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, well, all right. Then I still don't think that the person should be subject to the entire council. I still feel that the person that you choose should be the person that you choose, because that's the only way that you're going to have a greater diversity of people and limit the amount of groupthink that you're going to have up here and in all of our committees.
I think the 7 of you can argue that and figure out how you want to structure it.
What's that? I'm sorry.
I said the 7 of you can argue that point and figure out how you want to structure it.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it will still be a ratification by the council. Right. One single council member or even the mayor does not have the power to appoint anybody to any commission or committee. It has to be by council resolution or council ratification. So that will always be the case. How you word it, does a consent is required or council has a rubber stamp and just ratifies whoever you nominate. You guys can decide that.
Okay.
The only thing, I totally get what you're saying, but if you have a person who's a liability to the city that manages to just get reappointed, we couldn't have, I don't think we could have the mention of 1 year, and because at that point, what would be the point? You would just reappoint them every year as opposed to every 2 years. By having council approve, that could keep, some rogue person from picking a person that could potentially be hazardous. And that has happened. And at that point, the council has to decide, wait a minute, we're not having that person back on here. Otherwise, how would you get rid of them? You could never get rid of them.
And I'm not saying it's a perfect solution. My thing is
it's closest to perfect.
Right. Let's just say you had 6 people up here, and that were pro-development. They want high rise. I'm not saying that they do. And let's say reverse it, because then I don't want to make it look like I'm opposing anything. You have 6 people up here that don't want anything else to be built, and then you have one person up here then that wanted to put in, a mini domain or something. That person's voice should still be heard. And all those other people would say, well, we don't want that person on there. They're just going to be disruptive. We want to make sure they're keeping things the way we want it, and you're not going to have the greatest amount of, diversity that you could possibly have. You're going to have everybody up here that thinks the way that the other 6 people think. So my thing is that by making it subject to the entire council's approval, that you were potentially limiting people that could serve and do a very good job, that would bring a different thought process than, everybody looks at things a certain way, and then you have somebody else that, looks at it a completely opposite way. Well, maybe there's something to this. Maybe we should consider. Maybe we got to, do a little bit more investigating into this. I just don't want everybody up here thinking the exact same way. And I think that by limiting the council members to the approval of the other council members does exactly that. But that's just my opinion. If nobody else feels that way, it's not a deal breaker for me. I still like it. I just don't like to have my.
I think some of the issue you're discussing is accommodated by the annual, just a 12-month term.
Right.
If you pick somebody on a committee that everyone else thinks is really disruptive, they're going to twist your arm
Not to
6
nominate.
months before knowing that everyone will be leaving that committee at the end of that anniversary to put it back on.
So there are 2 things which happen with this. One is, historically, nobody's nomination has ever been not approved by the council. I don't know of any single time when anybody who was nominated by any council member to any committee where the council members were required to appoint, like the Charter Review Committee or Ethics Board or the Board of Adjustment or City Building Commission, whichever one it was, nobody was ever rejected.
Right. All right. Well, did I look too much into it? Then.
And second point is, what, at least in my opinion, what this does is, it actually gets all the council members invested. We used to just come in, mayor chose up the 7 people for each committee and commission except for those named committees or commissions. And we basically said, okay, I don't know anything about him. And frankly speaking, 4 or 5 of those 7, I did not even know who those individuals were when I said, okay, they are appointed and approved. At least on this one, you have each council member hopefully knows the person they are nominating a little better than just a name.
I get you. Right on.
A lot of our time was spent talking about people that have filled out the volunteer forms, becoming a pool of an asset that a new council person should go to the city manager and say, can I review the people that have put in, to be volunteers? And then that new council person should go interview a few of them. And if they don't have somebody specific for a committee, to get more of an engagement from the community.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Was there consideration, and I think there probably was, Eric, after just hearing what you said, to distinguish between, there's really 2 types of committees. One's that's a little bit more advisory. We're talking arts. We're talking heritage. And then there's a group of committees and commissions that really make big decisions for the city. in which some of it could present potential lawsuits. I'm talking ZAPCO, Board of Adjustments, ethics. Those are definitely different than I feel like the arts and the wildlife, which is at the time wildlife, and those type of committees. So what kind of discussion did you guys have in why it wasn't maybe separated? Because I can tell you, as being the liaison for the arts committee, we sit with vacancies because people aren't willing to step up to the plate. It's not about just going for one meeting a month. That's a very heavy lifting committee. And so that's where I'm wondering if we'll have even more issues trying to fill some of these vacancies, because as people get on the committee, then they become more and more vested, but they don't want to invest the time into something where they could be let go, so to speak, like fired from the committee in 1 year. Or not even a year, really, because if somebody we have people that, and the other thing with this is we have people who have to step off the arts committee, life changes. And so we've had people step off, go on mid-year. So how would that also come into this? That's one of the other things. So I feel like if you're getting on ZAPCO, I feel like you really know what you're getting into, where some of these others, I think there's turnover a lot more often than probably is known.
So 2 points there. The committee and commission members have no term limits. The same person can be appointed year after year by same or different council member if that's what you wish. If that person is doing a good job, they know their stuff and they want to serve in that position, and one of the council members agrees that they are doing a good job, you can nominate that person. Second, to answer your question about it's very hard to get people to volunteer, instead of just Kelly trying to find 7 people to appoint to art committee because you are the city council liaison to art committee, this actually puts it on all 7 of you as council members and mayor to try to go and find 7 individuals from the pool of volunteers who have shown some interest in that area. And maybe it will make it easier because there are different council members approaching different people trying to form a committee or commission. So you can take it glasses half empty or glasses half full. In my opinion, by having 7 people looking for candidates, maybe you will find it easier instead of harder.
Yeah, I know that we sit with vacancies on the arts committee because people, people aren't stepping up. And I know there's other committees where I feel like I said earlier, and I don't want to rehash everything. It's when you get into some of the bigger ones like ZAPCO, you really know what you're getting into. And not that they don't know on arts, I just think that it's just a different type of committee and commission, and different type of people who want to be on one versus the other. So to group it all together, I just feel like it maybe muddies the water. Now, maybe one of the other pieces to this is just have a removal process. If somebody is not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing as a volunteer, maybe we add another thing here where there's a removal.
There is a process in there, but it has to be initiated by the mayor.
Yes.
So theoretically, if we did something where each of you is appointing people, I don't know. I mean, it's
not to
a
muddy
number
the
of
waters.
possible ways to go about that. But the committee wanted to avoid, I think, the public action to remove somebody from a volunteer position, and to instead just do this appointment process. That's kind of the compromise.
Okay. That part makes sense, not to make it a bigger deal, especially on social media or anything else, that somebody is getting kicked off or they're just not being reappointed, is a nicer way of saying it. So I do agree from that perspective.
I mean, but this doesn't change anything, right? If you are having a hard time getting somebody to serve on a particular committee, how will this make it harder? Why would it make it harder? If there are nobody volunteering for it, and there are only those 4 or 5 same volunteers, I mean, 4 or 5 council members will pick the same volunteers and nominate them because they have nobody else to nominate. How will this change that dynamic? Yeah. That dynamic to me tells me that maybe people are not interested in that. Don't have enough of a interest in that particular type of committee or commission that nobody wants to serve, nobody wants to be involved. I mean, at least, that's the message I get from that.
So let's say, for example, I mean, I'm an artist, so it's easy for me to find somebody because I know other artists that live in the city, right? So I'm just picking on the arts committee, right? So it's easier for me to find somebody, but I'm going to pick on, I don't know, Kent here. Maybe he doesn't know anyone who wants to
Give him
be
another,
on it.
give him one
So
more.
that would leave him. Now, where would Kent come in to try to find somebody? I think that's where I'm trying to say
If
that
Kent was
maybe it
smart,
muddies
he'd pick
it a
up the
little
phone
bit.
and call you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Kent will call you.
Or just reappoint who's already sitting there.
Well, that was a discussion at the committee level, was that this kind of a move will force the council to work more cooperatively in many of these things. And we thought that was a good thing, which is why we're pushing for this.
Okay.
I've seen
No.
Kent's colorings. They're really nice.
His paint by numbers are fantastic. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll pass the baton.
Well, just before we move on, are there any further comments? Okay.